so then when we're eating for like nourishment, and we're eating for social, right? So we're eating for pleasure, for fun, and visual, because as we go towards the season of whiteness and snow, it's like color really pops. And so you get a lot of that contrast. So for many of you, being social should mean that you do it exactly in alignment with how you want to do it, knowing that your intelligence is going to lead, most likely. Can't depend on culture right now, so don't. Become culture, right? Push culture into the future. Set the next tradition, the one that actually is like, oh, I love that new tradition, right? That one.
Welcome to the Thrive with Cate Stillman podcast, made for you by us.
I figured, what better way to talk about food than food porn? Why wouldn't we use food porn when it's so readily available? So this was my thought, and I think we'll dive right in and see where we want to go with it. But when I look at this time of year and feel into it, I have a huge discrepancy between where I'm at and where culture's at. Like, that discrepancy is bigger than normal, and it's already huge. So now it's even bigger than normal, which means that it's easier to just let a malaise of ama come into the physiology and just fuck with the subtle body at the time of year when Agni is inverting and going into the solstice. It's going into the dark time if you're in the northern hemisphere. It's coming to the surface if you're in the southern hemisphere. And so culture is most at odds with that, which means it's the easiest time of year to fuck your shit up. Right? And it's hard because it's so strong out there. It's thick like pea soup. So first of all, fasting comes before any of this food conversation. And that's the hardest part, is culture's not talking about fasting right now. It's so unpopular. It's so unpopular right now. So if we don't get the rhythm of our own fast and feast for right now, and whatever our microbiome needs next, and that's really what we're going to do on Pinterest, is look at my microbiome holiday guide to food, is first mentioning fasting. So the ways we can extend fasting without it feeling like fasting, which is important this time of year, is it shouldn't feel like it, is you just go towards beverages, and you fall right into that lean, that 770%, like, you know, and for women, 700 calories instead of 500, like something that's a little bit more, you know, a little more generous without being stressing it all to your digestive tract. So you're still going to process. So if you got yourself in trouble, you're back into processing, but it's not as intense as a 500 calorie day. So what does that look like? Well, if you really want to milk it and feel like you're in the holiday spirit, to me, I go to beverages. So I go to broths, I go to kombucha, like fun alternative holiday drinks, make them festive. And we'll look at that from the microbiome perspective at the polyphenols. So the polyphenols are all the like cool spices and teas and strong flavors. And polyphenols just feed the microbiome. So they just renew the microbiome. So polyphenols are huge. So if we can take in some calories with lots of polyphenols, we're in a fasted state. We're going to absorb those polyphenols. We're going to have a stronger detoxifying effect, and we'll feel more grounded and at ease and just stoked on whatever we're doing in our life. So much so we won't get like distracted by sugar or whatever. Right. Like, and I'm not saying being a fucking absolutist, like, it's not about that. It's just more about like it's what's catching your interest. Right. Enough to put it into your body, because you have so many things to choose from. Like, I just took waves into my body, you know? So we're always taking in whatever we're taking in. We're taking in each other. We're taking in the elements straight from the elements. Surfing, you take in a lot of water. Although it was windy today, so it felt like a lot of wind too. I was like, oh my God, I have to paddle. Okay, so that part of it, that Agni also has to be turned on. And so then it's like, what is a meal? And so if we get that, like through the holidays, we're going into the internal time, and we have culture behind us. So it's like stronger now than any time of year. So if you're working on intuition, like showtime. Right. And that's why that malaise. So we're at the biggest paradox with culture, we're at the biggest odds with culture right now, and you're the most sensitive on the subtle plane. You're not the most sensitive on a physical plane because Agni's in right now, it's deep in, so it can handle things. If you let it handle stuff, it'll turn into a furnace, right? And then that gives you thermogenesis. So that's one of the primal habits, is allowing that thermogenesis to happen in the winter so you get your deepest burn. And these are all the things that make the microbiome happy, which means diverse. Okay, so do you guys want to see some food porn? I think is that the part of the conversation that we're at? So now that we've talked about fasting, let's talk about the microbiome, what the microbiome wants to eat. So we have the polyphenols. So you'll see the polyphenols right here in terms of color. If you're like, oh, color, you get hit with a lot of color, those are polyphenols. But then so is spice. And so to me, the polyphenols are the best nutrient, like rebuilder and detoxifier. So they're going to be pungent, right? They might be astringent or bitter. So like coffee is a good example of astringent and bitter. And there is a pungency to it. If you just like, well, yeah. So same with like garlic and onions, you've got pungent and a bit of astringent and some bitter, and then the spices. Then the other polyphenols are just in the straight up color. So you got like cranberry and beet. If we then look at fiber, so the other huge category of microbiome holiday recipes is like fiber. So just fiber. So fiber is what the microbiome lives on. So it's jungle gym, and it's what it eats. It's like food and shelter. It's like Hansel and Gretel in the gingerbread house. It's like, you can eat it, but it's much better than that. So then you've got all these things with fiber, like your beans, either sprouted beans are great, even like garbanzo, like any kind of, when you're just looking at plant food, it's like you're just looking at the fiber, like literally the fibers. So the grains are more like barley at this time of year, and it's not as heavy as wheat. If you do grain, millet is light and hot. And then mushrooms, onion, and garlic are all in this adaptogenic and polyphenol and fiber category. So they're like magic buttons. And that's why they're also anti-carcinogenic. Like they make those lists, right? You got all the mushrooms, you got all the onions, all the garlic, big immune booster, yada, yada. So just to recap, so first we have fasting, then we have reduction of calories. So like 700 to 800. We'll even say to 1,000, like just not more than that in a day, just to allow Agni to start to go back internal, like just to give it a chance to burn through whatever the fuck you've been up to. And you've been up to something, right? And the reason you've been up to something is because culture's at that here huge paradox. Like we're the furthest apart in the year right now. Like your consciousness and culture are the furthest part in the cycle as we're going to the solstice and through New Year's, in my humble opinion of polarity thinking. Right? So if culture's doing sugar and distraction and surface, and you're going towards depth, right? Which might be like the version of sugar might be bone broth or borscht, or something that's deep, pulling you deep in. So if you go towards the craziness on the surface that's bloated and omogenic, smack down right at the most important time of year, when you're getting a natural lift and potential into new year, no joke. Right? So having the vision clear and strong increases Agni at the level of Tejas, right? So then you're getting direction, saying I'm on purpose and I can see it clearly and I have a fucking strategy, right? Instead of like, I kind of think I know. Worlds apart. Okay, so then when we're eating for like nourishment, and we're eating for social, right? So we're eating for pleasure, for fun, for and visual, because as we go towards the season of whiteness and snow, it's like color really pops. And so you get a lot of that contrast. So for many of you, being social should mean that you do it exactly in alignment with how you want to do it. Knowing that your intelligence is going to lead, most likely. Can't depend on culture right now, so don't. Become culture, right? Push culture into the future. Set the next tradition, the one that actually is like, oh, I love that new tradition, right? That one. So maybe that's like gingerbread kombucha. I don't know. Sounds fun to me, right? There's so many choices. And then there's all the ways that you can just feast on color. So again, the cabbage itself is like, if we look at one food, if you're like, what is the number one microbiome nourishment food? It's going to be cabbage, which is why it's in all the kimchi, right? And the sauerkraut. It's like more or less every culture across the world. You've got cabbage based, like ferment as that which is feeding the microbiome. So you're like, sweet, I'm going to get some microbiome fertilizer into my people. How do you do that? You can saturate it in pork fat. That's one of my family's favorite, right? Like you can always add bacon to cabbage and it's better if you eat bacon. You know, it's like such an easy, quick, oh my gosh, amazing. And actually any kind of pork sausage is amazing as well with cabbage, which is why you find it in so many traditions together. Whether it's, you know, chorizo in Spanish or in Spain or Mexico, or sweet Italian sausages with sauerkraut, Germany. All right, so a few other things. You'll see just all these ridiculous like types of recipes that are pulling in color, right? And something like beet or cabbage. So I like beet this time of year in particular for liver detox or liver nourishment. It's going to do whatever your liver needs, probably both. And it has a panavayu. So if anyone's constipated, it'll move things. And even if they're not, like this is interesting how vata can be constipated and have loose stool alternatingly. So this serves like it's like an apanavayu strong. The beet is apanavayu strong, much stronger than cabbage for down and out. Beet is very strong for that, right? If you ferment it, or even if you turn it into a slaw, and it's a funny boundary where a slaw that has living ferments on it, like cabbage juice or kimchi, like a scoop of kimchi or a scoop of sauerkraut that's mature. And you mix that in and you let that salad sit a day or 2 or 3. Now it's also prebiotic. So now you're getting the probiotic and you're getting the prebiotic. So if there's been a lot of damage done, and there will be damage done, right? So you don't have to worry about that much because you can repair quickly. So if you do that on a day too, that you're eating less, so now you're having more of your fun kombucha drinks. So some days you'll want to just do like broth and mocktails and some kimchi and maybe one of those salads. Like some days those are just like, that's just going to be 100% microbiome repair day where you feel good. And on those days, you're maybe more focused to purpose for the next year. You're taking maybe some of that energy that goes into the drama of food, we'll call it, so, or the drama of the holiday. And I'll just like plug it completely into vision, just by taking your digestive tract down to the place where your microbiome can create the neurotransmitters, right? Can create the pharmacy, the hormones, the dopamine, right? Can manufacture all the things that you can really focus to your purpose. So that's on that 700, and that's how you might do like a day like that. Okay, a few other little things like treats, right? Treats can be like total crack, salted caramel apple energy balls that can feel like total crack, or it can be, you know, somewhere between, where were those ones? Did you see these? These have sparkles. Here's turmeric energy balls with lemon and ginger. Here's some pistachio balls, these cranberry and pistachio paleo, right? So there's so much fun stuff that you can do that's just 100% microbiome food, like everything about it. You know, especially if you're using maple syrup or xylitol or stevia as the sweetener, or fruit, dried fruit, etc. All right, that's my microbiome holiday guide. How did we do?
I love the ideas here because it's a way to be creative, and like when we bring something, we know there's at least one thing we can eat.
Totally.
And then I also love like behind the scenes of like, here I brought some beet and carrot salad, and like knowing like I'm helping your liver.
Yeah, totally. Susie needs a liver detox. Here's my chance. Oh my gosh. There's some really pretty ones too. Let me share this one. This is like stuff that you can share, and it's just fun to see how alive it is, right? So it's like good intestinal cleanser, roasted vegetable hummus platter, truffles and trends. It's clearly got pomegranate seeds. So you can also think of all the maidens that you're luring back into their own personal Hades. And you can tell some teenagers the story of Demeter and Persephone, you know, and then it's like, oh yeah, food's intergenerational. If we don't know the stories behind the foods, right? Like that's a fun thing to explore together too. What are the myths in my ancestral food traditions? All right, so in terms of digestion, just take a minute and evaluate, like, what do you need in the next couple of weeks? And one of the ways that I like to tell is the objective way, where I just take my hands to my stomach and I see how much of an inch or how many inches I can pinches. So I'm just measuring my omentum. I suggest everybody does like a good omentum check. So omentum is belly fat tissue, adipose tissue, white fat cells. All right. So then that just tells you how much you should allow Agni just to burn, right? And there's just an honesty there, and it has nothing to do with your mind. So you just tell your mind to notice your body, because the mind's in every cell of the body. And instead of like getting it to think better, like you're just like, just feel, mind, just feel. And then it's like, what do I want to feast on? So what do I want my attention to feast on? So just write that down next. What do I want my attention to feast on? And I think that's where the food can then really be part of it, right? Where you're like, oh, I want my mind to feast on color. I'm curious about red and green right now, because it seems to be a theme. So that you see that polarity between red and green, it's so dynamic, right? It's so far apart. And that's, you know, how you should feel with culture. It's like that change. It's like really different. And so you'll pick up on things of people just feeling off purpose or distracted, or their attention is involved in drama and they're not really thinking about their purpose. Like they're not working on their vision. Their conversations aren't ways and stimulate to the vision. You can just notice that polarity and like have that pull you back to yourself and pull you back to other people that you're like, oh, this is part of that 80-20 split that's happening. So you'll just feel into the 80-20 split, and you'll tune into like who's tuned in, who's my new floor is what Benjamin Hardy calls it. Who's at my new floor? People are like, oh my God, it sounds so hierarchical. And it's like, it is. Right? Ken Wilber pointed that out a long time ago. It's like, if you study human development, it's hierarchical. What does that mean? It means there's levels. Yoga says the same thing. So there's levels. Buddhism says the same thing. There's levels. Right? If you look at corporate structure, there's levels. Like it's something, it's not only that, it's that and, right? And it's inclusive of the whole, of all the previous levels. And that's what's so cool. You get to fucking learn. All right. So you all got that down of like, what's separating? Like what is part that's leaving right now, and what's coming into vision, and who's there, and what are they doing that's so helpful to me right now? Because the faster you can figure out your game at the next level and what the requisite skills are and what there just is the shit that needs to get done. I have a massive brag that I'm done with my member tagging in my CRM, and now I'm on to marketing tagging. Rebuild, total rebuild. I'm also on the other side of rebuilding our publishing process. It's in testing, but it's like that it's I think it's starting to gain momentum. So what are those things? Because if those don't get done, the whole next foundation has nothing to stand on. That's what you want to ask yourself. And then what's the fuel I need to get there? That's where the whole food thing comes in. It's like, that's just great fuel for your mind, because it's beautiful, dynamic, good for your body, good for everybody else who's enjoying it with you. And then when you just know you can't digest anything, then don't. Like, go for a walk, do an oil massage, do the things that are meals, right? So you can take a meal in as a walk. You can take a meal in through, I just did a meal through self-massage. It was amazing. So then what are those for you? For some of you, it's like foam rolling. For some of you, it's playing with your dog and losing the game with your dog. Time with your kids, time with your parents, time with a friend, skiing. I mean, whatever it is, just identify it so that you know, like, oh, these are meals too.
I have a question. How do we think about, because we're going into winter season, and to me, I think of that as like, maybe it's not wet and cold, but like that makes me think of dairy, or is that more of like a spring thing?
So it depends on AMA. I mean, you could say it depends on a bunch of things, right? But that's where, because we're in such a bizarre, like, I'm so curious about Ozempic and what, if it just increases Vata, or I'm not sure, but I think it increases Vata. I think that's sort of how it works. So it's like, to some degree, every question for me now is like, well, is the person overweight? And then, or are they on Ozempic? Like what's in the constitution? What is in this question, right? If we're super healthy and we don't have any AMA, dairy right now, like, yeah, thumbs up, warm. You're right, warm. And sharp if cold, right? So the pitta ferments of hard cheeses, because they increase Agni a lot, like now is good for that. Whereas in the summer, when you don't really want to have that, you eat more fresh cheeses, the soft cheeses. So if anyone loves like hard, sharp cheese, like, go for it, open season. Have that with some beef broth and some pomegranate seeds, on keep it under 700 calories on a day where you want to rebuild, and it's actually microbiome food.
That's helpful to put it back into context of the individual's constitution, rather than just thinking like, oh, this is the season or this is the environment. So it's always a good reminder.
I think it didn't used to be that way. I mean, I think it's actually really worth talking about, because I need to do this. I need to save these recipes and try them, just basically schedule them for me. I need to put the recipe into the calendar, automate that to the grocery list. So whoever's getting groceries, those things magically appear at the right time. Yeah, it does take some coordination, doesn't it? I would say though, for any of you who are going to parties where in the past you've been just sort of disappointed with selection, decide what you're going to bring. Eat yourself. I love that. Yeah, I don't think it's ever been so. Look at that one. Oh, winter retreat blood orange kale salad. I don't know if I do the tomatoes unless they were really juicy. But otherwise, I'd just leave them out and stay with the green things.
We have blood oranges in our tree outside my window here.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make us so jealous. You should make blood orange kombucha.
Yeah, we're going to do that too.
Ask Shay. Yeah, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And then you can make different ones with like turmeric and ginger.
Yeah, I try everything. So turmeric and ginger is the strongest. It's the most potent probiotic together.
Yeah.
It ferments quickly and it's like explosive. So there's a lot of fermentation going on there. And I do pomegranates and ginger, and that's really, really yummy. And my little boy loves pomegranate juice, He doesn't like the fizzy kombucha, but he likes pomegranate juice. So
I'm curious too. What I would do one of these just for your inner Ayurveda Indianness. Make one with like black pepper, cayenne, cloves, and then whatever else you're putting in that, ginger, turmeric, maybe lemon too. Yeah, put some lemon, and see if it works against everything. Because I think it'd work against any cold or flu. And I love the idea of the blood oranges being the sugar in the kombucha.
I don't actually add any sugar in the second ferment. So when I just feed it in the first with the tea, but the second ferment I used to put in sugar in the first few times, and then I tried it without, and it's perfectly fine. And there's still a hint of sweetness, even if it's all consumed, but we prefer it without sugar now. For the second ferment is actually without sugar.
That's awesome.
My husband and I that drink it for now. So and he drinks it like it's going out of fashion. And so it's like, when's the next batch coming? When's the next batch coming? So that's good.
We need Shay's tips on high volume. I think she's in high volume booching these days. Go Shay Lennon. Okay, so I just want to pick this one apart, this roasted beet and blueberry salad. It's like chances are blueberries are not in season where you are. So you take the blueberries out, you put the pomegranate in. This might be creme fraiche. So in Ayurveda, you don't combine fruit with dairy much unless you have really, really strong digestion. But other than that, you don't, because it'll ferment the fruit. Not in a good way, in a way that if you have ama or your vata aggravated, like it'll just cause the air form of toxicity. Vata ama. The body's just like, no, I can't digest anything, right? And then you feel 4 months pregnant and blah, blah, blah. So Agni does eat vata. So if you do end up in trouble, that's where the fasting helps, or going to a liquid day, right? With like barley water or kombucha or broth or some sauerkraut juice or, like whatever. Other than that, this one's great. Like we've got some cool different colored beets. We've got some sprouts. We've got some really pretty, what are these things called? Are those just radishes? I think those are radishes. I was thinking it was something else, but I think it's just a really thinly sliced radish that's maybe been stained in beet juice.
It looks like a watermelon radish, but I don't know.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.